Again, my name is Brian Gross. My company is BSG Public Relations, BSG PR. Started in this, like you said, 28 years ago. I want to thank Panos and everyone at interNEXT for having me. I appreciate this very much. I want to thank everyone watching, and hopefully, not hopefully, but we will see each other and be together in Las Vegas 50 weeks from now. That's going to happen. So let's start with the basics here. What is public relations and what is media relations? So public relations is the professional maintenance of a favorable public image by a company or other organization or a famous person. The state of the relationship between the public and a company or other organization or famous person. Thus, public relations, the relationship from what I work with and the public. Media relations involves working with the media for the purpose of informing the public of an organization's mission, policies, and practices in a positive, consistent manner. The role of media relations is to educate the media on your business enough to interest them in doing a story, and as a result, educate the general public on the services your business provides. Some helpful tips to keep in mind when planning your media relations campaign. Media relations is not advertising. I do not advertise. I work with the media, I work with the public, but solely in regards to getting messaging and information out accordingly, not through advertising. One of the biggest benefits for journalists is the easy access to story ideas and sources from publicists like myself. Public relations uses multiple channels to generate public exposure. Media relations uses one, the press. Public relations looks to build the relationships between the organizations and stakeholders. Media relations focuses on one key channel, the media. So that's the basic background there. As a publicist, you do both. You deal with the media, deal with the public, and your life as a publicist is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. An example just that occurred was watching the Super Bowl and knowing that the man streaking across the field was going to soon give you about 48 to 72 hours more work than what you thought might happen. It can be unburnout. It can happen literally just like that. So my background, while a senior in high school, I was decided to become an intern at Deaf American Recordings. And the person who answered the phone was in the public and media relations department. So 3 days a week, I would drive down and learn the ins and outs of public and media relations. I'd spend time with bands, I'd go see shows, and I'd build press kits, and I would just sit and learn. From that experience, went to college, and during that time, I was able to DJ on the college radio station, VJ a little bit with the video department at the university, wrote for the school paper, wrote for fanzines around the country, just thoroughly involved myself in media on both sides as to sort of helping out bands that were local in the area I was living in, as well as writing about records, writing about upcoming album releases, writing about shows, reviewing shows, interviewing bands. One of my favorite memories was an over 3-hour interview with Ronnie James Dio, of which I missed 2 classes that semester, while in school. Came back, college wasn't my thing, and I wound up getting a job working on the Lollapalooza tour in 1994. So 5 days a week, actually more than 5, I would drive from my parents' house to the William Morris agency. And at 18 years of age, I was an assistant publicist. And again, a tremendous learning experience working with, at that time, and quite arguably still, one of the largest, if not the largest tour in the world. If you recall, in 1994, the original headliner of that tour was supposed to be Nirvana. So I learned so much during that period involving having something as big as Lollapalooza, having all these media that want to attend, that want to write, that want to interview bands, and dealing with all the amount of bands that you deal with, management, agents, publicists, obviously. So it was an incredible experience where I literally worked from about 8 in the morning till 9 or 10 at night. And like I said, there were even weekends I'd go in and have to prep materials and press kits and whatnot for that tour. That ended, and I just worked my way through the record industry internship at Warner Brothers, assistant position at Reprise Records. You know, I took over the West Coast PR for tours and album releases for Elektra Records, which got me the opportunity to work with bands like Metallica and Pantera, which were tremendous opportunities. I actually worked with Third Eye Blind from the very beginning on that first album back in 1996. So I was there until 99 and was given the opportunity to become, as stated, the head of PR and marketing for Vivid. Was there almost 2 years and then started my company beginning of 2001. So the one thing I love to focus on are my mentors, because the people I worked for at every single one of these places, they weren't just like my boss, they were mentors to me. And they were mentors with over 7 decades of experience working with the biggest bands in the world throughout those decades. So they were always open and telling stories and selfless and just giving information and teaching and opportunity to sit and listen and learn about the world of public and media relations, which, having been in it as long as I have, there's a bit of people either understand or do not. What is sort of that art of being a publicist? What is the breakdown, the day-to-day? And we'll get into that as well a little bit. But if there isn't one thing I couldn't stress enough is how grateful I am. Some are no longer with us, some are still here, and I still talk to people who, you know, in their own way learned the art of public and media relations, working with, you know, incredibly famous and professional people and organizations and artists and bands that were just, you know, opportunities that I am forever grateful for. So I first and foremost have to stress and talk about, and I think it's important to really think to yourself, who are your mentors? Who are those people that you look up to that have helped you gotten to where you are in your career? So what I learned, what did I learn? What is I like to say the art of public relations, the art of my career, and why I've made this choice and have done this for as long as I have. The first thing is passion. The first thing is you have to wake up every day and know that every day is going to be completely different, and you're going to get hit with something you didn't expect. Even if you have your day completely planned out, you know exactly what you're doing. It's not going to go swimmingly, and you have to be ready for that. And with that, you need passion. You need to have a love for what it is that you do. And this is obviously across the board. But for me, it was a passion of loving the opportunity, the people to work with, you know, whether they were the most famous in the world or looking to just get their foot in the door. I've had a variety and just sort of a large variety per se of clientele. I did the math, and since going on my own, I've had roughly over 300 clients covering a 20-year span. And every experience has been unique, and every experience has given me something I've taken from it and appreciated. Creativity. You get the opportunity to work with artists if you're in entertainment publicity, and we work in the adult industry, and for the most part, there is an art to this, and there is art that is produced, and you get to be involved in that. You know, you get to learn from that. You get to work with people who are artists and really sort of digest and take in and learn about their passions and their loves. And working with people like that ultimately is an incredible opportunity. The thing is that there's a lot of practice. I'm in this office. I've been in this specific office for over 13 years before I was working out of my house and before I'd go to other offices. And I had that motto of first one in, last one out, because you have to constantly be in contact with people. You have to help people. People come to you with needs, and the answer isn't no. The answer isn't I don't know and pause or hang up the phone. The answer is I can help you. Here's how I can help you. And if you don't know, I'm going to find a way to help you. I think it is a really vital aspect of being a publicist, is that you don't just say no and walk away. You are dealing with someone that needs your help or needs something from you. And at some point, you're going to need something from them. And you want to keep that in mind when you're dealing with someone. One of the first experiences I ever had, 18, working at Lollapalooza, was I wasn't in a good mood one day. I answered the phone abruptly, and it was my boss. And she scolded me for how I answered the phone. And since that day, I've never answered the phone like that again. So it's important that every time that phone call comes in, it's something important and something that you need to handle. One of my biggest things with clientele is I'm never going to shoot an idea down. I'll explore it. You know, it's either a great idea or it's an idea we can work on, or it's an idea we can put out there. And if it fails, it fails. But we learned why it failed. We learned what happened that caused it to fail. And obviously, if it's a great idea and it takes off, we know that at the end of the day, the person on the other end who's watching me right now will have been like, oh, wow, that was an amazing idea. I saw that. How did you make that happen? What took place? And I think it's really important that, you know, all ideas are looked into, and there's always potential for something to come of it. That goes into pushing the envelope, being one step ahead. Those are things where when I have meetings, obviously now over Zoom or phone calls, certainly not in person these days, where we talk about ideas, my clients and I, when opportunities come from media people, when we want to bring opportunities to media, that we look to find a way to make it interesting, to give it that hook. And those ideas also come from media people themselves. Many times it's a give and take relationship where I'm getting information, I'm getting pitched by media people who want to write something. ID Magazine, wonderful pop culture artistic magazine, wrote a story that involved a few clients of mine. And their thing was they wanted to speak to performers about a certain independent film. And we made that happen. So it's a constant back and forth between the publicist and the media as to what stories are going to get published and what is of interest, so on and so forth. A very important aspect of a publicist is the ability to always be in contact and always be available. There's certainly boundary issues, and you take that up with your therapist, but as I have, but you know, it's really important. I've garnered clients because, frankly, I garnered one major client many years ago because someone put an out of office in their as a response to their emails, and I got a phone call, you know, hours later, and I was hired. So I'm not against the out of office reply, but as a publicist, you're always available in some aspect, especially for your clients. So, and I've been off the grid. I recently was interviewed about a story where I spent 5 days in North Korea. I've been to Cuba. I've been to, I climbed the Andes and went to Machu Picchu. So there are times I've been off the grid. Doesn't mean you can't go explore the world, but the availability is important, as is having someone who's a part of your team. I have someone that works for me who's an incredible person who has as much, if not more, experience than I do, and we work together as a team to where we're both able to accomplish the most that we can for our clients. You know, one of the funniest little things is always being on time. You know, people want to look at celebrities about being late and showing up late and this and that. And frankly, the biggest acts I ever worked with that were the most successful, they were on time. They weren't late. They didn't play the card. So I think that's one really important thing to keep in mind. There's really no room for attitude as well. I've found that, you know, when it comes to, you deal with egos and attitudes on a daily, hourly basis with people, all kinds of egos, all kinds of attitudes. But when you're trying to accomplish something for the greater good of your client, you know, your attitude needs to be in check. They might have an attitude. You might have to deal with that accordingly. But at the end of the day, you're working for them. And I think it's really important that you handle that accordingly. Keep an open mind. You know, if you're in a mood, if you're going through something, take a breath, walk away, go get a sip of water, do something before you engage, because, you know, someone in my position is working for someone and they want them at the top of their game. And so I think it's really important that there's a selfless nature into the kind of work that a publicist does. The most famous and well-known and successful publicist the world doesn't know. Equivalent to the offensive lineman on a football field. You only know who they are when they make a mistake. So it's important to keep that in mind in this profession of when dealing with publicists. And another important thing is to take care of everyone. And what I mean by that is I'm pitched by outlets of all sizes. And over the years, I have made relationships with people where they might have just had a fanzine, which is the most archaic word. if anyone recalls, those were actual paper music magazines, which I wrote for and adored. And I had a huge collection way back when. Wish I still had it, to be honest. But now you have online, you have podcasts, and you have blogs and this and that, and people. You never know where that person's going to end up. There's, over the years, as I was saying, there were plenty of people that I worked with that might have had an audience of 1,000 people that wound up going on years later to be a writer for Rolling Stone magazine. So it's always important that you never know where someone's coming from. You never know where they're going to go. And those relationships in my life have been some of the best relationships I've ever had. Another thing is I'm, in my daily life, I'm in constant contact with media people. And many ways, it's when I send an email, and it's literally a hello, how are you doing? A catch-up email. It's whatever, if I know that person, asking about a certain aspect. But it's the constant contact and the little emails. And it's not, you don't want to nag someone. You don't want to send an email every other day. It's on the occasion where you're reaching out to someone that maybe you haven't spoken to in a while. I mean, to give you an idea, I would say roughly around the world, there's about well over 100,000 people that I deal with to promote my clients. And not every, certainly the percentage of hits is far lower than 100,000, but every one of those people I've dealt with or worked with or reached out to or sent emails and they've never written back, or maybe they wrote back years later. But the important thing is the outreach on my end, the being aggressive on my end to really, either keep that relationship going or just basically checking in. At the same time, there are plenty of media people. There's a call I had today with someone that I hadn't spoken to. There's another call I had where the person, I realized we had never actually seen each other's faces. There was never a face-to-face contact. And there's thousands upon thousands of people of which all my relationships are strictly email or Skype or back in the day, AOL Messenger for you home gamers. So it's the constant contact that is one of, if not the most vital aspect of public and media relations. That is something that I try and make people really take a hold of and grasp, and as well as the practice. Focus on your writing, focus on your pitches, focus on how you treat people, how you talk to people. These are all things that are incredibly important in regards to being a publicist. So, those are the things that work. And at the same time, what doesn't work? What are the things, especially on the client end? And, there have been plenty of times where it just doesn't work. It's a relationship between the client and the publicist. And if it fits, it's great. And if it's a team effort, it's even better. But what it doesn't work is when the client just sits and waits and sort of crosses their arms and says, what are you doing for me? Because I will then go into the example of having worked with Metallica, having set up a lot of interviews with Lars Ulrich, having him accomplish every single interview I ever did for 3.5 years. He was no better than calling a person at a radio station, calling a writer, calling whomever to promote whatever album, whatever tour, whatever he had going on. And there was never ego about it because he's a businessman. He's a drummer. He is very successful, and he's in one of the most successful bands in the world. But he's no better than picking up the phone and contacting someone if it needs to be done. And over the years, unfortunately, there's been plenty of relationships where the person thinks that they can just sit there and I'll do everything for them. And I'll certainly try. But if there isn't a relationship, if there isn't a team effort, in most cases, those fail. And the person will ultimately be upset with their publicist because that's who to blame in that situation. But you can always look at someone who doesn't look in the mirror at their own aspect of what they're doing in order to help their career and realize that, you know, it's not just on the other person. We can always blame someone else, but at the end of the day, you still have to look in the mirror. So I always stress that my greatest clients are team efforts. We're constantly working together. We're coming up with ideas. We're promoting things. We're taking advantage of opportunities, and we're pushing the envelope. And those things tend to do really well. So I stress that people that are negative, sitting and waiting, not helping others, and have the ultimate "what can you do for me" attitude without giving anything, they're clients that just don't work. You know, it's not going to happen because there's just a one-sided relationship. And I don't care what you do. I don't care if it's personal or business. If a relationship is one-sided, ultimately you have to ask yourself, what is it worth? What's it worth doing? So, you know, some final thoughts just, you know, upon what it is I do in this career choice. And ultimately, I truly love being a publicist. I don't, you know, this is what I do for a living. I'm not an actor. I'm not a musician, even though I went to college on a music scholarship. I love this work. I put in the thousands and thousands of hours. And you have to be fearless in what you do in this, because you're going to deal with all kinds of people. Eliminate stargazing. There's really no room for it. They're just people, just like you and I. You have to take a lot of rejection. I deal with rejection every single day. Some of it's really nice, so sorry, and some of it's profane. I've certainly been cussed out more than I would care to ever say publicly, but that's the price of what I've chosen. I'll have an idea, I'll share it, and some people will tell me otherwise. So you have to enjoy the victories, small or large. I always say that if the day comes that I'm not enjoying, you know, an article that mentions a client or a cover of anything from a cover to a small article, if I can't enjoy them equally, then it's time to hang it up. So you got to enjoy the victories, large or small, when you're specifically in this line of work. But I think that goes across all borders, and it goes across all types of work, that every victory needs to be something that you cherish in that moment. So I want to thank everyone for attending. If you're still here, I appreciate that. If I bored you to death, I apologize. So that's my wrap.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. You definitely didn't bore anybody. We have a handful of questions here for you that we got to rifle off in a short period of time. But I must say, I love the O-line metaphor that you used to define that PR person, because really that quarterback is the star and they're the client, and your job is just to protect them, right? So unfortunately, 100%. you don't get to share all the glory, and it's pinpointed on you when you do make that mistake, much like an O-lineman. But I'm sure the star or the client in that case does, for the most part, respect what you do and understand what you do and appreciate what you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So in terms of experiences, you know, being a publicist in adult, maybe you can talk about how it is similar to the music industry and how it differentiates itself from the music industry.
Well, I always said, to put it bluntly, when I started Vivid, I didn't, a porn star and a rock star were 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. So they're celebrities. And frankly, there are plenty of, when I was working with Vivid Girls, these were some of the most famous women in the world, point blank, no argument. So you treat them accordingly, you handle them accordingly, you promote them accordingly. And, you know, it was no different. Celebrity is celebrity in that regard. So every person's very different. You need to know that. Need to understand that. And, you know, the only difference in the adult industry, I'll say this: you can take more chances. We're not dealing with publicly traded companies. You know, we're dealing with an industry that the rest of the world looks down upon, right? For the most part. I mean, it is what it is. I don't use the word pornography. I'll say adult film, because in the public eye, the word pornography is a negative word. So we can take more chances. We can take more risks. People oftentimes will be like unsure about something. And my question is, why not? What do you have to lose in whatever idea you have? Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, no one's going to know. And if it works, it's a success. So that's one thing about this industry that I think people who have been successful have taken advantage of.
Is PR accessible for those smaller independent cam models?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're making money, if you have the budget, the whole point of it is getting attention that increases your fan base and thus making you more money, right? It's pretty linear in that regard, building your brand. So, you know, it's been fascinating, especially during the pandemic, to see how certain, especially clients of mine, have been incredibly successful, done really well through all this, because they have people at home more than ever, and they're just looking for some form of entertainment. And this gives these people the opportunity to build their brand up even bigger than it was before, make more money, and have that ultimate financial freedom down the road.
Awesome. Now, if people out there, I know there are a couple more questions in the chat there, Brian. So if you want to maybe hop over to the chat after and answer those questions on a one-on-one basis, that would be awesome. But what's the best way people can contact you if they have any questions?
Sure. It's Brian@bsgpr.com, on Twitter @bsgpr.
Awesome. Favorite Third Eye Blind song? Go.
Oh, the background.
Awesome. Motorcycle Drive-By is mine, man.
Oh, the last three on that album. I'd hate to say it. I
Love it.
wouldn't want him to know, but yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you.